All right. Well, welcome back to another episode here on the Enneagram at Work podcast. I am your host, Sarah Wallace, part of the Enneagram MBA team. And today is a fun episode because I have a guest and I actually have two guests. And so we're going to get some real world experience, which is always really fun to hear somebody else's take on things and to hear how they experience the different types. And today we are going to be matching up the coworker chemistry of the type 1, striving to feel perfect, and the Enneagram type 4, striving to feel unique. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. But to help us have this conversation today, I have one of my guests, Lee Fields, who is a coach, a teacher, and an Enneagram consultant who is certified across all kinds of schools. This is kind of impressive. She serves on the board of the International Enneagram Association for the Southeast chapter as the vice president. You guys hear me talk about the awareness to action. I don't know if Mario would like this, but I call him my Enneagram dad. So I don't know if Lee is my Enneagram sister. I don't know.
But
Lee serves on the faculty with Awareness to Action International, and she recently has co-founded the Analog Enneagram with our fellow guest today, Seth Creekmore, and she's teaching, she's writing an inner work field guide, tending a creative Enneagram community online, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this, as a fellow cat mom. So Lee, welcome.
Thank you.
And
all true.
Okay. And we're going to get into this. Lee is representing our Enneagram Type 1 today, so we're going to hear a little bit more from her on what that means. And then our other guest today is Seth Creekmore, otherwise known as Creek, who is also a coach, a podcast producer. I was just telling him how nervous I was to have him on the show because this is what he does a lot of. And he's a musician. So he is the co-creator, co-host, and a producer of multiple Enneagram podcasts, including Fathoms, which we have talked about on this show before, Awareness to Action podcast, and the International Enneagram Association's podcast. So he has a lot of podcast Enneagram experience, and then his work through the liminal practice and analog Enneagram focuses on helping thoughtful people slow down, notice what's actually happening, and respond with greater care and intentionality. And as a type 7, that is a lot of the work that I try to do myself. So, Creek, welcome.
Thank you. All of that is mostly true.
And okay. And Creek is representing our Enneagram Type 4 today, striving to feel unique. And we're going to talk about what that means. So the majority of this conversation, I really am interested in kind of the compatibility or the relationship dynamics with these two specific types. Obviously, we're going to talk about your specific dynamic, and then if you see anything else out in the world or in theory, I'd love to hear about too. That's going to be different for everybody, but we're going to just talk about some potential things, some similarities that this dynamic the strengths that they might have, and then some potential friction points. Before we do that, though, as always with this type of episode, we just kind of talk about a refresher on the type. And I'm actually going to have Creek describe the Enneagram Type 1, if you don't mind, Creek.
Whoa. Okay.
I know. Well,
Curveball.
sometimes it's curveball. I know. Sometimes it's hard to talk about yourself, and then I just thought it would be kind of fun to switch it around.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So Enneagram Type 1, striving to feel perfect. I'll just talk about my personal experience with some of the ones in my life, right? I think that's much easier than trying to paint a stereotype. So we can insert the human into this type. So the ones in my life, right? Often there's always a little bit of come and go as far as our interactions. I'm never always quite sure where I stand in the beginning of the relationships, because I think we're both kind of sussing each other out, and that's maybe a dynamic between the 4 and the 1 a little bit of what can I trust and what's going on. But we quickly, especially with the ones in my life, we bond over, the aesthetics. the beautiful things, the things that are ordered wonderfully, and how good it makes us feel. I see the ones in my life, they're actually quite funny. They can come across as, sometimes sticks in the mud, but their dark sense of humor just really speaks to me. And because they see everything that's wrong with the world, they got to figure out how to laugh at it. So there's like a little, you can kind of see, sometimes you can see ones be a little bashful when they make a naughty joke or an inappropriate joke. And that's just my favorite thing, because once we start down that road, I just love watching a one kind of come alive in that sort of space. A little unconventional way of describing a one, but
I wouldn't expect anything different. Creek.
Yeah. Yeah, but obviously very, very ordered, very principled people. They, of course, think they know what is right, or feel that they know what is right to do, and I think in kind of their best sort of ways, they want to see people succeed. They want to help reduce friction in people's lives. And when they see something that's wrong, they're like, well, let me help you fix it. Let me make sure you see it, and then let me help you fix it. And that can be a wonderful gift and a bit of a thorn in the side sometimes. But that's another story. So.
Okay, and I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
And this was inspired by your website. I liked how you kind of shared what each other has to say about one another. And so my question for you is, what is one of your favorite things about Lee that you see many other type ones have? Like what about that type 1 energy do you appreciate and see in Lee?
I think it's like kind of this level of courage about their opinions, that I know that I can trust, that I never have to guess where they're at, what they think about me, what they think about a situation. If I ask them, there's a almost a moral uprising, a necessity to say what they actually think. And that's something that I really appreciate. And, it's the good ones, we have a very spirited debate about the things that we disagree about. And it's wonderful.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one. I second that. That's a great one.
Yeah.
All right, Lee, let me ask you, for those of us, we're going to get it kind of a refresher. How do you describe the type 4? And you can do it in whatever way you want to, striving to feel unique.
I'll start by saying that several of the most important people in my life are 4s. So I have a deep appreciation for 4-ness. And I would be remiss if I said anything like they're all the same. There's very little in the connective tissue of what 4 essentially is, except they're all discreetly and distinctly themselves, sort of around a core of some values that I think are really, I see threads of the values between the 4s that I know. And in that striving to, Creek mentioned aesthetics being a place where we have some crossover in the Venn diagram of ourselves, right? And I feel like that's so true. But with Creek and with other 4s I know, there's always another layer of beauty or aesthetic or vibe to kind of dig into. And without help, I wouldn't look deeper. And I think that excavating to another level and trusting that there's myriad more underneath it is something that all 4s I know, if not are gifted at least are attuned to. And Creek, of course, is gifted at it.
All right. Well, and it's okay if that's your thing. Is there anything that you would add about Creek's 4-ness that you appreciate in addition to that?
I mean, we're only going to record for like 40 something minutes. I can't just
You know?
list everything.
Aw,
I can't go to
shucks.
the bullet points of Creek's
She knows I'm
exceptionalism.
skittish about positive
I know.
affirmations.
I was going to say, Sarah, also there's a rule that I have to give something negative with every positive to counter it. You can guess whether it's his rule or my rule or whether we agreed to it. But I think one of the things that Creek really brings to the table consistently, and I've seen it in other areas as well as in our friendship and our professional relationship, is standing his ground and pushing with difficult questions, and challenging not for the sake of challenging or for being contrary, but to expand what's being talked about to a truer version of what is, just a deeper look.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like I think whenever people initially hear about the one and the four, or you read about it and just some of the, Enneagram literature, they seem like such opposites. Like how could you resonate with both of them? But when you kind of get into it, there is some of that overlap, and I'm hearing like truth for both of those and honesty, even though it may not be what you want to hear. And so that is one that I see as a kind of a common thread between those two. I just have to say something funny. Lee, you said you got to say something negative to Creek. I have a friend who I was talking to about this podcast episode, who is a type 4, and she just got a new job offer literally yesterday. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. And she wrote back and said, thanks. I think I'm going to need a few days to process it in order to feel happy about it. And I'm like ready to celebrate. I'm like, we should toast, a virtual toast tonight. She said, I need some time. I just can't believe it yet. She said, why am I like this?
That's great.
That is
I can
great.
resonate.
Oh, yeah. So, I do, before we get into the matchup specifically, something that we're going to be talking more about and threading more into our conversations is the dimension of the Enneagram specific to the awareness to action framework, where we have the instinctual biases. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of curious, as somebody who identifies Creek as striving to feel unique as that type 4, you really feel the navigating instinctual bias. How does that influence how you express, or how that type 4 is expressed in work and life, however you want to answer that? And then Lee, I'm going to ask you the same thing with your transmitting instinctual bias, how that overlays with the type 1.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting because in my Enneagram journey, like 4 was like painfully apparent rather quickly.
Okay.
And I went through the first like half of my Enneagram life thinking I was self-preservation, and then met Mario, and as he tends to do, points out how we're not seeing ourselves as clearly as we think we are. And he's like, I think you're navigating. And of course I had to push on it because that's what I do. And eventually kind of,
you don't know me.
Yeah. Yeah. And just realizing that I was attached to certain things about the self-preservation that I was like, no, like I am good at this. I do these things really well. It's like that's not what he's saying. It's more, again, as some of your listeners may know, like it's more about the relationship to these domains, not necessarily if you're not that thing, you can't do that thing. You're not good at that thing. So I think as I kind of started to relax into noticing how I pay attention to the social dynamics, to who I have in my my contact app on my phone. Whenever I get a new number, I always put relevant information in the notes section, where it's like, here's here's like how did I get to know them? Where do they live? What do they do? Not just as a selfish thing of like, hey, I might need your help someday, but also as like, hey, someone reaches out to me, he's like, hey, looking for a photographer. I'm like, cool, photographer. In my phone, all my photographers show up, and then I can go from there. I think how navigating shows up for me is really just a lot of connecting people, and it's a lot of trying to survey the field of what's happening that no one is clocking, and trying to understand how do I leverage those things to make this environment, this team, this concept more accessible and less friction. How do I kind of shape this dynamic, this vibe towards something that feels better to me, which feels selfish on the surface, but we're all doing it.
Yeah.
And it's another way of saying it, I suppose, is how do I want to use my gift to shape the environment towards something more beautiful. So did that answer the question? Sometimes I get on a roll and I forget what the question was originally.
Yeah.
So.
No, that was good. And, I was just even thinking kind of how both the four that what Lee said about your ability to kind of go deep and then that navigating energy, I'm just kind of curious how you see that be beneficial. Obviously, it's beneficial, but how do you see it be beneficial in things like all the podcast hosting and producing?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, the ironic thing, any of my friends that knew me prior to, my 20s are just stunned that I am in podcasting. Because like most people didn't know I spoke until I was out of high school. Just very quiet, introverted fella. And so I think in the podcasting realm, I'm able to, I've developed a skill for interviewing that I think we can have a structure and we can plan, but then being able to read what things are not being said and poke on those, be able to challenge ideas in a way that's welcoming, and seeking truth and beauty together instead of adversarial. And I think that's a skill that kind of has come with time, but it also, I'm incentivized to do it because I don't want the person I'm interviewing to feel dumb or attacked or anything, right? I want to stay in good standing. So finding the ways to create an interesting conversation that is compelling. I see the four and the navigating working together in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I see that in the friend that I mentioned, and I could see this. I don't run into many, which I always say that they probably love fours in a lot of the environments that I work in. But they do bring those, like you said, poke a little bit more at the, like, ask some questions. And I think that is obviously valuable as a podcast interviewer and host, but also, on a team, asking some questions that nobody else is necessarily thinking of. And I appreciate that so much because I see something and I'm thinking, this is it. And then I'll have my friend who is a type 4, also navigating type 4, say something and I think, oh my gosh, I never thought about it. I did not even cross my mind. And so it can be so beneficial for guests on a podcast or your teammates in the conference room.
So I collaborate with a couple different media teams when it comes to podcasting. And I do find myself often in that role of we're trying to deal with a difficult client or something like that. And I'm the one that's sent in to, first it's like, well, we shouldn't do that because we need to discover more data before we make an assumption about what needs to happen or what their motivation is and all this other stuff. And I do think that is something that I consistently bring to a group or a team, is like taking a pause and trying to understand more about the context of that decision instead of just looking at the decision and then reacting to it.
Well said. Lee, I'm going to ask you,
Yeah.
how do you see your type 1 being influenced with that transmitting energy?
Yeah, fairly significantly. I have like 3 things I want to say
Okay.
about what Creek said right now, which is part of how transmitting is
go ahead.
impacting my 1 energy. No. It's like, that's part of it. It's like, I think that all of us can fall into, in the Enneagram world, all of us can fall into sort of stereotypes of what a type is or isn't. And I think that one of the really useful parts about the instinctual bias model working in tandem with the type strategies is seeing more nuance to human beings and how they are and what their values are and how that's expressing. And again, it can complexify things, but if you keep it at its sort of simplest bit, it can be so useful because a stereotypical 1, if you're going to believe Instagram about what a 1 is, all we care about are loading dishwashers
Yeah.
and tending to our succulent gardens.
Color coding
and-
your closet.
Right. Bullet
Proper
journaling.
uses of a semicolon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that one? Okay.
You got her. You hit a nerve.
Important, but the truth is, and this is again speaking about myself personally as a human being going through life with a 1 strategy, I have learned that I really do care about the rules that I think are important, and the other ones I do not care about. But I still think I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, and so part of how I see transmitting, working with my type strategy, is that I'm more comfortable with that dissonance than I think some people would be. I'm not focusing all of my attention on just myself and my nest, or you know, I can laser focus my attention on this situation or that situation, and in awareness to action language, it's sort of broadcasting and narrowcasting. I can see big picture and spotlight, and I can pick out what's wrong with all of those and decide what I think matters. You know.
Let me ask you this, Lee, just because this comes up so often, and I don't want this to turn into a typing episode, but what you just described is very similar to a type 8. How they kind of believe, you know, what's right, wrong. And a lot of, how do you describe that difference?
Between a type 8 and a type 1?
Uh-huh.
For me, there's sort of a somatic difference between them. If 8 is striving to feel powerful, then there's a certain amount of energy that's there. I don't know. For me, there's a difference between right and wrong with type 1s that don't necessarily come onto the screen of awareness of an 8 in the same way.
Okay.
It's my way or not my way.
Uh-huh.
Whereas I am describing, that's true of how I make decisions, but that's a lot of work to figure out that's true of how I make decisions. For most of my life, I was doing the right way, and there was one, and I knew it. It wasn't my way. It was the way.
Yeah.
And for the type 8s that I know and work closest with, I see less of a concern with the right way. And it's more I'm putting my energy behind what I think is right.
Okay. Thank
Does that
you. I
answer
know
the
I kind of put
question?
you,
Yeah.
it does. I kind of
Yeah.
put you on the spot, but that is something, because I'm assuming there's probably going to be some people listening to this who are like, am I an 8 or am I a 1? That just tends to be one of those
Yeah.
kind of more, there are some similarities. And so
For
just
sure.
kind of curious your interpretation of that.
And I think that there are similarities between all of us as humans, right?
Yes.
Like you could describe things about sevenness and I can be like, yeah, I see that.
Yes.
I relate to that. But it really comes down to what we do most of the time and the pattern we fall into most of the time. And most of the time, I feel like I'm much more frustrated by not being able to change things than I think a more typical 8 would. They'd either change it or quit.
Okay.
You know.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you. I think other people are going to be, that's going to be helpful for others too. All right. Let me ask you this. So, again, obviously there's no way to distill humanity down to 9 types or 27 with the instinctual biases. But there are, tendencies, there's some commonalities. And so I will always say, this is the disclaimer, this is not 100% true 100% of the time, but these are things maybe to ponder on, to look at, to reflect on. When we have a 1 and a 4 paired together, such as the two of you, for example, what are some complements that you bring to one another, or what are some additional similarities? What ultimately are the strengths of two people who are, who have this type 1 strategy and this type 4 strategy that they're bringing to a conversation, a project? Lee.
Well, I would go back to. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of them is Lee already knows her opinion about something. I need some time to chew on it. So
that's right. Kick the ball to Lee, where Kate can think for a second.
All I can think.
Well, for those of you who are listening, which is probably most people, Lee raised her hand immediately, and I was like, "Okay, Lee, yes."
And Creek muted himself.
Yes.
What's behind the scenes on the video?
That's right. I'm going to go back to something, Sarah, that you said at the top of the conversation. In a way that I think 4s and 1s are sort of cousins. And that has to do with the 4 seeking authenticity and 1s being sort of integrity junkies. And I think those are related and complementary in a way. If you weren't carefully defining your terms, there could be crossover, right? Of truth, and at least seeking for that, like what's the truest thing, what's the best we can do. There's an idealism, and a purposefulness that's very satisfying. When I work with Creek, I feel like I'm doing work that matters. Work that will help people live better in their real lives, not just in a fantasy world, but and that's gratifying work to do, And I think there's also, with the integrity piece, a trust that, just speaking personally, there's a trust that I can mess up and it's an okay, safe place to do that. And that because of that trust, I can hear criticism as constructive, as opposed to something that I need to be defensive about. It comes with care. It's like, I'm saying this because I love you, but you need to hear it, and that's not valuable. It's invaluable. It's priceless.
Yes.
I'll add on to that, as I normally do. I think, and not to get, I'm going to get a little philosophical here.
Stunner.
So as we've been talking about, beauty and truth, it made me think of Dostoevsky and Kant both talking about beauty and truth, like beauty will save the world, or Kant said is like beauty as a moral statement. And I think that's a representation of that line where Kant was talking about how when we see something beautiful, it's kind of a similar reaction as something moral. We have something, we feel something in our bones that this is beautiful. Beautiful?
Yes.
This is
full of
this
beauty.
is beautiful, and this or this is good, this is right. And so there's some sort of interaction there that gives us a sense of belonging to the earth, a sense of involvement, witnessing something that is larger than ourselves, but we can still interact with and admire, aspire to, all of those sort of things. And I think that that's just something. And on one hand, a lot of Lee and I's conversations, we bond over our frustration over how things are not as they should be. And we'll have sessions where we're just going on and on about the ridiculousness or the idiocy of that thing or that person or whatever. And we both get some juice off of that. But then, Analog Enneagram was birthed out of frustration of this. People are doing two ends of the spectrum, but missing the most important piece of unsexy day-to-day. How do I get out of bed? How do I process my emotions without having to sit down for 30 minutes and meditate? Like what's my automatic checklist to figure out what to do next? What skills, what tools do I have available that is the right tool for the job in the right moment, in the right context? Instead of needing these far extremes of simply awareness or some large action-oriented big overhaul in your life in order to grow.
Well, and at the end, this is coming, so just heads up. I do want to talk a little bit more about what Analog Enneagram is and how people can learn more. So we'll talk more. If listeners are like, "What is this?" You're gonna stay tuned. We're gonna talk about it. And I love that though, because it is kind of like I either have to do something incredibly transformational, like life changing, or I guess nothing at all. And most of the change is in all those kind of small moments. So yes, I agree on that. Is there and it's okay if there's not, but is there a specific moment or situation that comes to mind, funny, serious, deeply meaningful, that the two of you were working together and your kind of stereotypical behaviors like were really showing, or your strengths were really and you're like, oh gosh, this, or your kind of opposites, the differences that you have are really showing?
Lee?
Oh, I was going to say, Creek's got this one. Doesn't have to pause. There are a lot. We've worked together in a lot of different ways. And so I think there are examples of each of the things that you said, but I would say as a utility to the listener, one of a difference between the two of us that I think is something that we navigate and accommodate one another on is pace. And I tend to go fast and kind of nonstop. And that has its place, right? And it is very effective, sort of. But because Creek and I communicate pretty well about what expectations are, we work around problems that would be there. But in relationships I've had in the past, I would have blown over people,
Okay.
both because of my natural pace and from the transmitting standpoint, and being pretty much indifferent to navigating. I would have steamrolled over people, not realizing it, and never looked back. You know, and so then and that is sometimes rewarded by being effective. You know, but with Creek, I'm kind of checking my rearview mirror. It's like he's following me in a car, and I'm checking the rearview mirror to make sure he's still there, because I know where we're going. You know,
Great analogy.
yeah. And sometimes I'm wrong, you know, so he can say like, yeah, we took the wrong, that last left was not correct. So back on the road. But that's one of the biggest differences, I think, between us is pace.
Okay.
And the solution to that, and I think any other problem that we would have, is communication. And how we communicate is going to be impacted by how we think. So we may have to use our words to say, this isn't working for me, or I need more of this or less of this, or ask questions. And I'm very bad at question asking. This is the whole point I wanted to make on coming on this podcast today, is that the bleeding edge of growth for me is to ask questions instead of make statements.
Oh.
And Creek is an excellent teacher by example, because he asks good questions. But he'll also directly push back on me and basically be saying, but make it in the form of a question, like he's Alex Trebek. Like, you know, yeah, but imagine a world where that stuff you said was a question. I'll be like, okay, I got to get a pen.
Gotta brainstorm this.
Hold on, I got to write. I got to
workshop
this
this
down.
real quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just give me 5 minutes, right? But that is something of real value. And I will say also, before knowing the Enneagram, I would have thought I was a great question asker. You know, and that's not precisely accurate.
I think what is true is you're a voraciously curious person. I just don't think you always externalize the question that already happened in your brain.
Fact. I think because of the speed.
Yes. Well, and it's also with Analog Enneagram and other ways that we've collaborated. Like Lee has been kind of on the board of directors of Fathoms for a few years, and I was leading that team, and so in that, sure, maybe she goes at 85 miles an hour, but when I'm in the lead, like she's easily in the back seat, being like fine. But just be like, you could turn here, but you know, there's a bridge up there. I'm like, cool, we're still going 55. So there's also a role thing, and this goes with the navigating and knowing right now in my life, my capacity to be a visioneer, is limited. And so having Lee as that kind of, as the driver is just really helpful. Then I can hop in the car and we can go where we need to go. So I think the other thing I was going to say is analogies and metaphors make their ways into our conversation a lot. And thankfully, Lee has a story for everything, or some sort of vague reference to something that happened before I was born that then she gets to teach me about, that really fits perfectly to whatever we're talking about. And I think that's something we've had to, I think, is natural, but it's also we've had to learn on how, like, I need a metaphor in order to understand what we're doing. I need to see the structure. I need to feel the direction we're going. Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that is necessarily how you see things. And sometimes you have to kind of drive around to figure out your direction, where I'm kind of like standing still and looking around before I choose a direction.
I think that's a good metaphor.
Hey,
Another metaphor.
Opa.
it just happens.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that I have a tendency to be in motion while I am deciding.
Okay.
And for better or worse. And sometimes it works very well. Like Creek was saying, if I'm taking point on vision casting what we're going to do about something, then I can say, hop in the car, I'll catch you up on the way to the airport. Right? And off we go.
Can I share our Tom Petty story?
Please, please.
Yes, you can.
So one of the ways that we communicate through all of this is sometimes Lee Lee has a lot to say about something, and sometimes I feel I'm like waiting for like, where are we going? Like this, I'm here for it. Like I get the process, and after a while, I'm like, I've forgotten what we're trying to figure out here. As And so the people that I live with, they have a daughter who's 3 years old, and she's really into Tom Petty for some reason. And so I just at any point that I feel like I'm still falling and waiting for the impact, I just start humming, and I'm free. And that's her cue to be like, all right, let's land the plane, so we know what we're going for.
I will make a thesis statement.
Okay.
No, then that's what the free falling
yes,
is.
yes.
It's like, okay, back to here. And
Yes.
so in conclusion, where we've landed is here. And you'll be like,
Yes.
right. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I know where we are.
Cool. Why were we talking about orangutans?
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things that I love and that I hear teams talk about loving is how the Enneagram can make something that might be normally frustrating and be able to make a joke about it. And I know that the Tom Petty reference isn't necessarily like a type specific thing, but those things come out of it because you're able to be like, okay, and whatever your type is, but this could drive me crazy or this thing, and you got to turn down that whatever a little bit, or maybe turn that up a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're going to say something.
I think it might be the most valuable thing about the Enneagram in working with other people is it's really compassion.
Yeah.
And understanding and respecting and appreciating another person's logic, right? It's like, this is not how I would do it, but it's valid and it makes sense in their system. And I'm trying to work with that. I'm trying to work with this person, and this is the language they speak, and that's why any of the three of us are on here doing this right now, to human better.
Yeah. Just a tool at the end of the day. Doesn't have to be our whole life identity. Let me ask you this as we start to wrap it up. Are there any stereotypes with these two that you think people either don't get right or just completely false? And here's one that I've seen, and maybe there's something to this, or maybe there's another one, is I'll see a lot that ones can be very rational, logical, kind of have a tendency to think feelings are not facts, is what I hear sometimes. And then I hear the 4 saying that context is really important. Feelings are facts. And that could potentially cause some friction, but is that true? Or is that, what other type of misconceptions, or is that a true theory? Just kind of curious, any thing that you think people get wrong about these types and how they might interact with one another?
Well, I mean, to speak to the one you just brought up, I can speak from my experience. I mean, of course, different 4s are going to have different experiences. I think, to me, emotions contextualize the facts of what is happening, and how I feel about what is happening influences how I want to act or behave or what decision I want to make. And I think, I won't get into all of this, but like, I think all of us to some level are making what we consider rational decisions. But from what data set?
Great point.
And is it from just a reactionary? Is it emotional? Is it, I've thought through all the pros and cons? And I think there's something with, feelings aren't facts, but facts are barely facts sometimes. And so it's more about, I guess the invitation there is just curiosity on the overlap of those. And so I think, yes, the stereotype of the 4 just being emotionally driven, non-thinking, no reason, just whatever comes up is the truth. And that's just called immaturity. And that happens everywhere from, 8s to 4s, I feel angry and therefore I am justified in treating you terribly. And obviously that's not all 8s. I'll try to think of another one, but that's just my own comments on that. I think emotions play a part in my decision making for sure, but I'm also just really committed to seeing the world as unfiltered as possible, because that's authentic. That's the authentic view of the world. And so I am voracious, and I know a ton of 4s that are voracious about like chipping away what's unnecessary and what's ugly about something in order to get to the actual thing.
I'm going to have a hard time adding on to that. But I'll make this observation. I cosign. And I think that this is one of the places, there's about to be a tiny bit of preaching. I think this is one of the places where Enneagram teaching can be dangerous, because it isn't that ones want to put their emotions aside and just deal with the facts and don't think that emotions are facts. I think anyone who's had a real argument with a 1 would have a difficult time believing that was their position, even if they thought it was. It would be something like, yeah, but my feelings are facts.
Right. But
you
mine
should
are.
stop having your feelings until we get this sorted out, because I'm having feelings about it.
Your feelings are not facts. Yes.
Your feelings are interrupting me solving this problem. So hush, and then we'll solve it, and then we'll talk some more. That's closer to what it is. But this is one of those. So Mario Sikora, our Awareness to Action Enneagram dad, right? Quote somebody whose name I can't remember, saying that all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? This is a place where I think the Enneagram model is possibly not useful enough to be helpful. And it's this about like conflict styles, right? Because in a conflict, as human beings, we are not just staying in our Enneagram type strategy number nonstop. Even if you believe Enneagram theory fully, we are banging around those connecting points like mad in conflict, right? So we're not just oneing. I'm doing 1 and 4 and 7, this whole argument, right? Even if we're just going with Enneagram theory, much less humaning. So there's going to be moments when I'm like, let's just calmly talk about this. And then you're going to hit a nerve and I'm going to be like, let's just calmly talk about this. Or I could throw a couple punches and then, so it's an argument, for goodness sake. It's a conflict. We're having a disagreement.
Yeah.
We're going to have the tendency to throw everything we've got at trying to get through it, you know. So I would say, I think there's a moment after the fact when you can look back at a conflict and do sort of a post-mortem on it. And you can find a minute where you did that thing. You tried the strategy of whatever your type is to avoid the conflict from going on, to solve the problem. And then when it didn't work, all bets are off. You're just trying everything until it's over. And you can't know in the minute because you're in it.
You're in it. You are in it. Yes. Yes.
So all you can try to do is, at that point, is get through it and later learn something from it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's this magical thinking when we get into Enneagram, and there's logic behind this too, that boy, if I learn this thing, I'm going to be able to never have a conflict again.
Right.
You know, but clients come to me all the time wanting to know how to work with their business partner, their romantic partner, their kids, whatever. And the subtext of that very frequently is, how do I stop them from doing their thing their way and act right? You know, that's some one coding right there, but it's, or how do I work with them? How do I massage this to work with them? And it's like, you just try to be healthy enough in your own personal self to not get triggered and fly off the handle as quickly, or to be able to make repair after the fact if you do.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to avoid conflict forever. That's not part of the human, that's not how the game is played. You know? So.
And that, a lot of times that's where the growth is, as long as you can go back and repair it in a healthy way. Thank you for all that you have shared and being so open, because I feel like this has been such a great, fresh take and perspective on these two types, and then kind of the dynamic between the two, because there are, I think, quite a few stereotypes about both types. And so it's always great to kind of bust through those with real world stories. And then on top of that, just sharing some of your fresh perspectives. I appreciate. I want to ask you about Analog Enneagram. Before we go there, though, is there anything else you think that our listeners should know about either one of these types, or these types working together, or the Enneagram in general, which you've shared quite a bit, but anything that I haven't asked you about already that would make this feel complete?
I mean, the only thing that's coming to mind is just, I know we're primarily talking about 1 and 4, but the vast difference of the subtypes and how those express. I mean, the importance of understanding, for me as a navigating forward, to understand my role and how my identity plays into that role. I remember, Lee, I don't know if you remember this, but like at the beginning stages of Analog, just being like, I need this to align with my identity, and I need to, like, what is my role in this community, and therefore how do I infuse my identity and my distinctness into this space? I'm not looking to just regurgitate. Like it needs to be a unique contribution, or I'm just really not interested. And so pushing into that, we found that, but I think for people working with 4s, it's sure it can absolutely get in the way, and those are often the hardest conversations, is when a 4 feels like their identity is threatened, or someone is perceiving them in a way that is not how they see themselves. But if you can have a conversation and collaborate with them to find how their identity and their uniqueness can be infused into this space, that's when the buy-in would typically happen. And so I think it's, the emotions there are because they care so much about what they're doing, not necessarily just because they're being led by their emotions.
So
what
well
they do
said.
is so tied to who they are. Too much sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off of that for one. as a 1, I have different identity issues, but doing things right is a value, and I think that one of the things I've learned from collaborating, especially with Creek and Stephanie Spencer, I work with, who's also a 4, some of the language that I've come up to describe a difference between the two of us is there's a certain amount of rigidity that I bring, which can sound sort of brittle, but it's also sort of foundational, right? Like if you're building a building, you want that rebar in there,
Right.
But there's a porousness that 4 has that just breathes more. And the reminder that both things are important, but that I have a tendency to see in a pretty binary way or a pretty incurious way, to be honest. I live with a lot of certainty. And if that's left unchecked, I'll stay in my fast driving lane and keep going. But I'm really benefiting from taking a minute and breathing and asking more questions and imagining what else might be true. And my work benefits from it. My work might be technically right without it, but it's way more compelling with it.
Quotable.
Yeah.
Quotable, Lee. Love that. Let me ask you, tell us about Analog Enneagram. What's going on right now? Where can people find you? And then anything to look forward to around that for us to look forward to as listeners.
Creek, I'm going to speak first and you're going to have the last word.
Great.
Okay. So you can find us at analogenneagram.com and at Analog Enneagram on Instagram. It is analog with the GUE at the end because we're bringing the British U back when it's important. And we recently did Tyler Zach's Typish Summit. That'll be available for purchase if people didn't attend the summit. And we have some exciting new things coming up in the fall and in the new year with some personal growth workshops with our analog stuff, which is predicated on a basis of the awareness to action Enneagram model. We're pretty excited about that.
And is it, so anybody who's wanting to learn more, is it set up yet where it's going to be workshops they learn from you? Is it coaching? Is it anything else about how people will actually learn from you?
It's coaching right now. We're working on a workshop to release to the public and as part of the Awareness to Action certification program. So that's coming up in the new year. But for right now, we're individually coaching and working on developing our workshops.
Okay. And I wanted to be clear because I think that people are going to really appreciate your takes from today and your insights. And so if there was a way to work directly with you. Okay. So we'll link those. And then Creek, I'll let you have the final word.
All right. Yeah, I think I'll just speak to the philosophy behind Analog a little bit more. We were just so happy when Lee stumbled on the name, because I think it's, especially in today's world, it's a trend, it's a thing, and it takes effort to go be analog. But it's what our souls are yearning for, I think, right now. And that doesn't mean you can't use technology. I mean, a lot of the analog stuff that we use is still technology, still uses circuit boards, right? But it's more tactile. It's more lived in. There's stories attached to it. There's skills that are required for it. Mm-hmm. And in life, so much of our identities, so much of our, especially with the age of the internet and social media, our communities are non-tangible. We're trying to make inner work tangible, inner work that is usable, but not just to add more things to your backpack, but things that enhance your everyday life, that are enjoyable to use, easy to use, and actually useful, instead of just, another laundry list of the things I should be doing. And so I think it's, another thing that's kind of influenced this is the kind of movement of everyday carry items, where it's often these like highly thought through, obsessed over little tools that you put on your keychain that can, MacGyver your way out of any situation. And those are the things that we're trying to help, is how do we curate your little everyday carry bag when it comes to tools for personal growth, the everyday things of, you're feeling really overwhelmed today. Well, let's check your sleep. How'd you sleep? Have you had water? Have you had food? When was the last time you moved? When was the last time you had sunlight? And so like there's the bodily functions to look at. Then there's also the stories that you're telling about the situation, and little games that you can play with your mind to help it jump out of those well-worn grooves, and find a way to see the world a little bit clearer without losing your sense of direction. And I think it's a fine line, and I think it is very personal. So we're trying to find that, how do we deliver this sort of really personalized, curated thing to the individual en masse? And so, yeah, we're excited to see where that goes.
Well, congratulations. It is a beautiful, fun brand. I have brand envy. Okay, you guys gotta check it out.
All I wanted.
Check it out. I love the font, the colors, the photos, the imagery. I love it, love it, love it. I do have to say quickly before we go that I had mentioned so often at times I'm in a room with no fours or one solo four. And many times, and you guys maybe have experienced this too, the initial question is, well, do we need to, I guess we need to hire more fours, where we have a gap here. And we'll talk about, it's not about hiring a four, it's what does that four bring to the team. And I just feel like, because this is always such a gap, Creek, I have to call out, one of the things that we talk about is the four's ability to storytell. And I think you have just done such a beautiful job of storytelling through metaphors and analogies. And you always do in your podcast interviews. And so if you've ever heard me say this before, listeners, like this is what I'm talking about. And I know, Lee, you also do it. So it's not only fours, but that is that kind of energy to make facts, data, interesting and compelling. And you don't need to hire a four necessarily. It's what can we incorporate into our sales messaging, our marketing messaging, that a four tends to be so naturally great at. And you have just been such a great example of that. So thank you, Creek. Thank you, Lee. I know that you both have a ton going on. And so it has truly been such an honor to get to spend time with you, to learn from you. And I have learned things myself. So thank you. And I'm sure our listeners have as well. We'll connect all those Analog Enneagram places to find you in the show notes. And with that, I appreciate y'all for being here. And listeners, we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.